Welcome to Kessel Motorsport. In this video I will tell you about our client David's BMW M3 E46 full engine rebuild. Every engine rebuild starts with full engine disassembly and assessment of all the components. So we create basically our own job list, what needs to be done in order to bring this engine back to regional or better specification. So let's start with the engine block. The first thing that we did is checking the cylinder bores and checking the main bore of the crankshaft bearings. The cylinder bore had quite a significant wear. It was 87.18 millimeters at the top dead center, where the piston changes direction, movement direction from up to down. Wear was 87.18, 87.19 millimeters. So it meant that we needed to move to first repair size, so basically new set of pistons, which is 87.25 millimeters. Next, we assess the straightness of the main bore for the crankshaft. In this case, the assessment comes from multiple observations. One is we checked the old main bearings, which had almost no visible wear, even after 120,000 kilometers. Also measuring with the straightness gauge, we found out the bore to be perfectly straight. After putting the main caps on, we measured the diameter of each of the individual main cap locations, and both the alignment and the size was pretty much spot on from the factory. So there was nothing to do there except small honing of the bearing housing of the bore to remove any residue from old oil, since the engine is quite old. Then we remove all the oil plugs that exist from the factory in order to so we can wash all the oil passages and channels, and we tap them, and in the end, after cleaning, we will put screwable taps inside, so the holes are closed. The cylinder bores we bore and hone with 50mm deck plate, and that's needed because these blocks have high distortion of the bore after the head has been tightened. So when you put the deck plate on, the bore ovality, or it more looks like almost like a square, is more than almost a tenth of a millimeter in some directions, or close to. So we put the deck plate on and bore and then hone the cylinders so they are closed perfectly round when the head is on and the engine is assembled together. The honing we do with control of the honing parameters. So honing for us is something we have also invested quite a lot of time, and it's quite an important parameter for perfect ring seal, for the first braking process, because there is a physical process between the rings and the honing of the cylinder at the first startup and braking process, so they each bed in each other basically. So we get minimal oil consumption, good compression, so the cylinder pressure is kept inside the cylinder chamber instead of leaking past the rings. When you have a good honing process done. Next, we deck the block. We do it as a main reference, taking not the bottom of the block, but instead the main bore of the crankshaft. So the surface is perfectly parallel to the axis of the crankshaft. And the top surface we also control the roughness with the profilometer, because it gives us confidence about sealing of the head gasket, since it has a polymer coating on top, and having a good surface finish is very important, both from the block side and from the head side, so we have a good seal and no leakages. And in the end we blast the block and we paint it with both anti-rust epoxy primer and black, in this case, color. So the block is finished, washed and basically prepared for the assembly. So let's start from one side. I will show everything that we have chosen for this engine rebuild and what we have done with the internal components. We have a new Magneti Marelli water pump with aluminum impeller instead of the plastic one, so that's not going to fail for a very long time. All of the aluminum pieces we have vapor blast, so they are clean and as new. The crankshaft we have checked for straightness, we have checked all the dimensions and checked it for cracks. And once it passes all the green lights, then we polish the journals, so there's a good surface for the oil to adhere and no excessive roughness. For the main and rod bearings we have chosen ACL main bearings and King polymer coated rod bearings with a little bit additional clearance, since these engines tend to run a little bit too small oil clearance from the factory. Regarding the pistons that I spoke earlier about, we have chosen Mali Motorsport first repair size, which is 87.25 millimeters pistons, that we have done a little bit of profiling, so we remove all the sharp edges and we apply our polyfen thermal insulation coating, which helps to get us a little bit more ignition timing on these engines, basically moving the knock limit of 98 fuel a little bit further away. For the rods, we have replaced bolts with the ARP hard steel bolts that we not just simply install, but we measure the bore dimensions with original bolts, and then we find the correct torque for the upgraded bolts, so the bore is in alignment. The small end we did a small resize because the Mali Motorsport pins are 1.5 hundredths bigger in larger in dimensions in diameter than the original ones, so we corrected for that and we restored the honing pattern. The weight for piston group with rods is balanced, and the rods are balanced end to end, so they are the same between each one, and all the sets weigh the same. So the rotating assembly, we could say, is in balance. The engine valves are reground seating area and small profiling of the sharp edges, and all the dimensions are checked. The valves are in very good condition, no cracks, so we reuse the original ones, just cleaned and polished. The camshafts have no excessive wear. The chains we use all OEM from BMW. Those are all new with all the chain guides, both chains, so that's everything new. Regarding the head, we have checked the valve guides, they are in good condition. We just give it a little bit of honing with a flex hone inside, and we clean it everything in ultrasound, open all the cavities so we can wash them well, and the surface is CNC machined, so the parameters, again with the profile meter, is in exact parameters that we need. The 1S unit, we have a separate video on YouTube how we rebuild it. We have both Beizan and other OEM parts that we use for full rebuild, and we adjust the clearances also, so it's everything perfect in spec. And as the last piece we have a Carbonius intake box. airbox for which is basically a CSL copy. So that's about this S54 rebuild. Hope you like it and see you in the next one.